Hi everybody, welcome to this Wall Street News. Nvidia announced a strategic partnership with OpenAI on Monday. Nvidia posted on its website, quote, Nvidia intends to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI. According to the S&P Global, Flash US Composite Purchasing Managers Index fell from 54.6 in August to 53.6 in September. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell discussed interest rates and the U.S. economy on Tuesday and said, quote, by many measures, for example, equity prices are fairly highly valued. On Tuesday after the bell, Micron Technology announced financial results for its fourth quarter ended August 28th, and it expects current quarter's revenue to rise 10% sequentially. According to the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Department of Housing, Urban Development, sales of new single-family houses jumped 20.5% in August from the previous month. The U.S. Census Bureau reported Thursday that new orders for manufactured durable goods increased 2.9% in August, month over month. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the number of Americans claiming unemployment benefits tumbled from 232,000 to 218,000 in the week ended September 20th. Nvidia announced a strategic partnership with OpenAI on Monday. Nvidia posted on its website, quote, OpenAI and Nvidia today announced a letter of intent for landmark strategic partnership to deploy at least 10 gigawatts of Nvidia systems for OpenAI's next-generation AI infrastructure to train and run its next generation of models on the path to deploying superintelligence. To support this deployment, including data center and power capacity, Nvidia intends to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI as the new Nvidia systems are deployed. The first phase is targeted to come online in the second half of 2026 using the Nvidia Vera Rubin platform. According to the S&P Global, Flash US Composite Purchasing Managers Index fell from 54.6 in August to 53.6 in September. The S&P Global said, quote, U.S. business activity growth slowed for a second successive month in September, accompanied by a softening of demand growth. While growth was again seen across both manufacturing and service sectors, both categories reported weakened expansions, leading to slower hiring in both cases. The S&P Global Flash US Services PMI decreased from 54.5 in August to 53.9 in September. The S&P Global said, quote, inflows on new orders for services likewise showed the smallest rise for 3 months, as weaker domestic demand growth offset the first rise in exports since March. In addition, the S&P Global Flash US Manufacturing PMI also fell from 53 in August to 52 in September. The S&P Global said, quote, while new orders rose for a ninth straight month, the increase was only marginal. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell discussed interest rates and the U.S. economy on Tuesday. When it comes to the U.S. stock market, he said, quote, I think if you look at some prices, then they are elevated relative to historical levels. We're not targeting any level of prices for particular financial assets. We do look at overall financial conditions. We ask ourselves whether our policies are affecting financial conditions in a way that is what we are trying to achieve. By many measures, for example, equity prices are fairly highly valued. Micron Technology announced financial results for its fourth quarter ended August 28th. The company reported $11.32 billion of revenue for the quarter, up 22% sequentially above its previously estimated revenue of $11.2 billion. Operating income based on a GAAP basis jumped 68% from $2.17 billion in Q3 to $3.65 billion in Q4. When it comes to the guidance, the company expects current quarter's revenue to be approximately $12.5 billion, up 10% quarter over quarter. However, shares of Micron Technology fell 3.47% over the past 5 days. Micron Technology President and CEO Sanjay Mehrotra said during the conference call, quote, "Turning to our end market. In data center, we now expect calendar 2025 total server units to grow approximately 10%, up from our prior expectations of mid-single digits percentage growth. The calendar 2025 traditional server growth outlook has strengthened significantly from flat to growth in the mid-single digit range. We believe this change in outlook is in part related to the growth of AI agents and the traditional server workloads agents initiate as they execute tests on behalf of users." Turning to PCs, end of life of Windows 10 and greater adoption of AI-enabled PCs are driving an improved PC demand outlook. We now expect PC unit shipments to grow at a mid-single digit percentage level in calendar 2025 versus our low single digit percentage growth expectations previously. Smartphone unit shipment expectations remain unchanged at that low single digit percentage range in calendar 2025. Now turning to our market outlook, customer inventory levels are healthy overall across end markets. We expect calendar 2025 industry DRAM bit demand growth to be in the high teens percentage range, somewhat higher than our previous outlook. We expect calendar 2025 industry NAND bit demand growth to also be higher than our previous outlook, now in the low mid-teens percentage range. We expect Micron's calendar 2025 bit supply growth to be below industry bit demand growth for non-HBM DRAM and for NAND. In calendar 2026, we anticipate further DRAM supply tightness in the industry and continued strengthening in NAND market conditions. The U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Department of Housing Urban Development reported Wednesday that sales of new single-family houses jumped 20.5% from 664,000 in July to 800,000 in August, up 15.4% from 693,000 in August last year. In addition, the median sales price of new houses increased 4.7% from $395,100 in July to $413,500 in August, up 1.9% from $405,800 in August last year. The U.S. Census Bureau announced Thursday that new orders for manufactured durable goods increased 2.9% from $303.2 billion in July to $312.1 billion in August, up 7.6% 7% from $289.9 billion in August last year. Meanwhile, new orders for non-defense capital goods, excluding aircraft, rose 0.6% from $76.2 billion in July to $76.7 billion in August, up 4.1% from $73.7 billion in August last year. For your information, new orders for non-defense aircraft and parts jumped 21.6% in August from the previous month. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the number of Americans claiming unemployment benefits decreased from 232,000 to 218,000 in the week ended September 20th. In addition, the number of Americans receiving benefits after an initial week of aid ticked down from 1,928,000 to 1,926,000 in the week ended September 13th. 10-year Treasury yield was hovering around 4.11% earlier this week, but it rises to 4.18% as the initial jobless claims tumbled to 218,000 last week. On September 12th, 2 weeks ago, I told you that I bought gold because the US labor market had weakened over the past 3 months. But I sold all the gold Thursday because the US labor market looks good now according to the weekly jobless claims. So I'm waiting for US stocks to fall because I wanna buy the dip if they fall. Okay, this is the end of today's news. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.